Practice during lockdown. How much have you guys really been doing? Welcome to Guitar in the Real World. Hi guys, Tim here. So we've had weeks and weeks of being locked in our houses. So as musicians, that means we can be just doing tons of practice, right? We're honing our chops. We're sounding better than we've ever sounded. We've got impeccable touch, impeccable time. We're all killing it on our instruments, yeah? I can't say I am. Let's be realistic about this. All this free time makes us feel like it's almost like our duty to practice our nuts off. But for a lot of people, it's just not possible. There's too many other things going on within the house. Lots of people got families. I'm one of those people. But you can try and make the most of it if you think about how you're going to practice. It's not just about sitting there and drilling scales, technical exercises, learning solos, transcribing solos, all the kind of stuff that you would normally do when you're trying to improve your instrument. One of the things that has been really useful to me is just recording myself. And I've been recording my own stuff, I've been recording a few bits and pieces for other people, but that's one of the most productive ways of really evaluating how good you sound. There's nothing new about that concept, but if you're trying to make your practice feel like you're achieving something more musical, it's a good way of going about it. You know, make something, create something. So this is what I really want to talk about this week. So how have I gone about this recording myself business in order to evaluate my playing? Well, sometimes I've specifically recorded myself with a view to evaluating my playing. For example, recording a little backing track and then either recording myself improvising or playing a set piece or playing a transcription of a solo. And then I can go back, have a listen, but also really look at it on the grid just to sort of check out my timing and see, really in a sort of a graphic way, how my phrasing sits. You know, if I'm playing a run of 16th notes, you know, do all four of them land on the grid, or is the second one slightly rushed and the third one slightly rushed and then the fourth one slightly late, for example. It's amazing when you do that surgical analysis of your playing, just what you can find. And it can be a little bit disconcerting, to say the least. But I would say it's a good way of going about it, because what you're doing is you're analysing your playing from a listener's point of view, whilst trying to do something creative at the same time. Sitting there just drilling through scales and exercises is very necessary, but there comes a point in your life where sometimes that can feel a little bit like almost like a waste of your time. I don't know if it's a symptom of getting older, but doing that kind of practice I find harder and harder to deal with these days. The other thing I've been doing is, as I said, actually recording tangible pieces of music in the form of original compositions, or recording parts for other people on either original pieces or covers of stuff. And that's really interesting as well, because you're often laying on top of either a sequence track or laying on top of pre-recorded drums and bass, and the drummer and bass player will have their own sort of placement within the click. So of course this is the kind of stuff that every working musician would find themselves doing from time to time, but I would say that just because you've got all this free time where you're not being asked to do a job of work, you can still operate in a kind of a real world situation and be practicing in the same way. So what we're going to do is take a look at a couple of the things that I've done over the last few months and talk about the kind of issues that I've come up against and how I've gone about improving my performance. Okay, so what we've got here is this little TV theme type of thing that I've been working on. It's a demo. When I put the initial demo together, I actually used this, what am I looking for? This guitar track. Not this guitar track, this guitar track. This was the original lead guitar part. I'm going to play it with, actually I'll just play it with the click track so we can see what it sounds like. Okay? Okay, so it's not sounding too bad. It's kind of all right. But even if we hone in on a couple of these notes, you can see that when I start the next A section, that first note's a little bit early. In the end, I decided I wanted to use my 3-3-5 because rather than my Strat, I just preferred the tone for what I was going for. But if we look here, I've subsequently replaced that guitar part with a new performance, and we can see that I'm still playing this downbeat a little bit early by a similar amount. And there's a couple of points where if you lay up the grid, you can see similar things going on. I mean, it's not bad. It's really not bad. But by doing this, what it means we're able to do is kind of, in the process of creating something, you can look at your playing and start saying, okay, I've got a tendency to put notes early when they come in this kind of context, or notes late when they come in this kind of context. So let's just go back and listen to that again with a click. Coming early note now. So I just find that's an interesting thing to look at. Okay, so what I'm doing here, what I've got here is, this is me playing through an old transcription that I found from Guitar Techniques of Larry Carlton's solo on the tune Breaking Ground from his Friends album. The transcription was done by Sean Baxter, and it comes from the Guitar Techniques magazine, December 1995, I believe. So I learnt this years ago, but I thought I'd revisit just as a kind of an exercise in general performance again, execution. So I created a little backing track, but what I'll do is I'll solo off one of these performances, or maybe we can look at both of them. We've got the editor down here, so we can really zero in on my accuracy. It's probably disgusting. I need that. Right, okay, let's see how this sounds. Okay, so that's the first opening phrase, but straight away there was one of these notes that I didn't play very clean. There, second note. That note that's on the downbeat, which is there, you can see on the editor, it's a very weak note. So this is supposed to be a semiquaver. Yeah, but that semiquaver there, here, it's a weak note. So when you're practicing like a solo like this, just getting it under your fingers, you might not really be thinking about how well you're executing the actual notes. You might be thinking, yeah, I basically played the solo fine. But when you record yourself playing it in a real context with a rhythm section kind of groove, you can really highlight these things. So let's just look at this again. So bad note there. So okay. So we look at this note here, beat 3-2. So the second semiquaver of beat 3, isn't it? Yeah, that's right. So yeah, there's some hammering on. So you're picking the every other note in these semiquavers. But you can see that I'm a bit late with that note there. A lot of the timing of this phrase is not bad, but you can see it tends to get a bit laggy with lining it up with the grid there. Definitely see with those hammer-ons as well. So that's an interesting thing to just observe. See, to me that sounds like I'm dragging slightly, just getting a bit laying back. See, that should be on the beat. Da da da. So this note here is on the beat. This one is on the second quaver, slightly late for this semiquaver here. And then it sort of gets back on again. All right. And then we've got here. Didn't play that very clean at all. So what we hear here is that I've got behind because I wasn't comfortable with the opening statement in the phrase. So I start dragging, and in order to gain, get back on top of my time, I'm having to keep up. And you can hear that. You don't even need to look at it on the grid. There we go. Da da da. Beat. Da da da. Beat 2. Late as anything. Okay, so I mean, we could go through the whole solo, analysing the way I play every single phrase in each of the different takes. But I think you get the idea that by recording yourself, you get to listen back and hear what you sound like from a third-party perspective. But when you're recording in the digital domain, you can actually look at the waveforms and really analyse exactly where you're putting the notes. And also, like in that opening statement, analyse the kind of intent that you're playing the notes with. This second note here, again, let's do it again. There it is. You can hear that note is weak, but when you look at it on the grid, you definitely get a really strong sense of just how weak it actually is. Yeah, so essentially, what we've been doing here is assessing how dreadful my playing can sound under the microscope. But it's a really good way of being honest with yourself about how you sound. Like I said, practicing a solo without listening back to your own performance of it will only give you half a perspective on what it really sounds like. Often when you listen back to yourself, you can be pleasantly surprised as well. I think that's an important thing to consider, because it's all too easy to just think, oh man, I'm not getting this under my fingers, I'm really struggling with this phrase, this line here. And undoubtedly, in that take there was still some things that weren't quite under my fingers. But you can listen back to it and also hear that, oh yeah, there's a certain characteristic that I bring to the table. I can tell that's me playing that, even though I'm playing a Larry Carlton solo, because of the way that I play the notes and the way that I inflect them. So in these strange times of having seemingly endless hours to practice, I would say this is a really nice way of practicing without sitting there and playing exercises. You can analyse your playing on a really deep level just by trying to create something musical, whether you're playing somebody else's solo, or whether you're recreating a piece that already exists, or whether you're doing a completely original piece of music. Okay guys, we'll see you next time, and yeah, keep creating. Cheers!